Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Player Engage podcast. Today, we have an episode I'm very excited about. We are going to talk to Dan Fox. He's a seasoned expert in cybersecurity. He started his impressive journey where I first met Dan at Smarsh. He played a pivotal role in growing the company from a small team to an industry leader with over 300 employees and $100 million in revenue. Leveraging his experience, Dan founded Securecast, a SaaS-based company in security awareness, and was later acquired by Webroot. He continued to drive innovation in cybersecurity through roles at Carbonite and Webroot. In 2020, Dan co-founded ControlMap, a groundbreaking cybersecurity compliance platform that was acquired by ScalePad in 2023. Now Dan leads the cybersecurity team at ScalePad. He continues to lead the charge in delivering top-notch cybersecurity service across various sectors. And truthfully, what excites me most about this interview here with Dan is it took me a long time to realize this, but Dan was one of my first mentors I had in my career. He was the first one that hired me as my job at Smarsh, which got me a role in customer service and got to really see what customer service was like then. And my whole life now has been dedicated to building out this customer service role at HelpShift and so on. So before I gush too much about Dan and say too many nice things about him, Dan, thank you for joining me today. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Greg. And your journey has been an impressive one. I'm glad to have been a part of it from the beginning. When you joined in, you got to see the early days of starting a software company from the ground up. You were there, I think, in the first 20. You were one of the very first folks coming into our New York office at the time, and yeah, Smarsh is now a multi-billion-dollar unicorn company. So they've done phenomenal. I left Smarsh years ago in 2015, I think. So it's been a bit, but they've come a long way. Actually, sorry, 2017 rather. But yeah, you've been there for a long time, and you've then grown into where you are today. So it's happy to be on here to join you, chat about it a little bit.
You helped open my eyes to a whole bunch of different worlds that I didn't even know existed when I graduated college, right? At first, as a graduate in finance, right, I, along with most people probably listening, had no idea what you wanted to do when you grow up, right? I know I wanted to be in tech. So I found Dan through Smarsh, and Dan introduced me to the world of customer service. You think you know what you know about technical support until you're actually put in that role, and you start seeing how systems are built out. Before we jump too much into how kind of customer service was, let's call it almost 18 years ago now, crazy. Let's talk about Dan, right? And you at Smarsh, I think you were one of the first few employees, probably within the top 5 to 10 at Smarsh. How do you step into a role of a startup? Kind of what support did you have then? What was your day-to-day like back then, if you can even remember?
Yeah, I'll give you a little history even before then, and then we'll jump into that because I think really it's important to start at the beginning. I started in a help center on a help desk in my very first role. I was supporting real estate professionals, and had at the time it was one of the largest real estate companies in the San Francisco Bay Area. Before that, I was supporting kind of data center migrations for Yahoo and Microsoft, actually just as like a midnight shift worker moving systems. You start at the beginning, right? And then you kind of keep expanding your knowledge. What I learned that I needed to sort of bridge the gap on was understanding how these systems operated. I got into Active Directory and Exchange and became certified in Microsoft. And that's where I shifted from becoming, more of a customer service, working with the customers, to also doing the system admin. I'm still working with customers the whole time, but then I was becoming a system admin at that point. Spent a couple years running systems, and then I was in a position where I could join a company like Smarsh, which had a very promising future, but I was basically the first tech employee there at Smarsh, to where I was both managing the call center, the help center, helping customers directly, but then at the same time supporting the systems, supporting the IT, and wearing those two hats. So I didn't just kind of, put myself in that position. I was already kind of 5 years into my career by then.
I think, it's the life of a startup where you wear many hats. And I think there's a lot of pros that come with it, as well as a lot of cons with it. The con would mostly be you're just stretched very thin. You're doing a lot. You're taking a lot on. But at the same time, you get to learn a lot about yourself at that time. And you get to see what you do like and what you don't like. And it's funny you mentioned kind of moving data centers. I remember driving with you up to Massachusetts and ripping out a data center in an overnight. That became a nightmare. But
Yeah,
it,
that was
it's
not a
funny.
fun project.
Yeah, right. It's funny how you can kind of understand that stuff. And through the time at Smarsh, right, you began to manage a team of customer support agents. Back then, we were supporting people with phone and we were supporting people with email. I remember an inbox at the end of the day. We would always take a look at the inbox and see if we can leave it overnight and see if we can get back to some of these tickets tomorrow. Sometimes tickets would go crazy. And it was always this hair pulling event of how well are we doing in support. I know this is a silly question. It might be years too late, but was there strategies back then, or was it just kind of throw a bunch of stuff against the wall because we were a startup and how we can handle it? And I don't know
Yeah,
how do you even come up with that?
yeah, it's a good question. I mean, at the time, it was just handling the customer's requests and getting back to them as quickly as possible. For the most part, it was kind of the first in, first out. You know, as soon whoever comes in, we're going to respond to as quickly as possible. We always try to zero out the best we can. You're never really at zero, but you have to have your priorities. And the tools got better. We started just with a shared inbox, and then we had to go into our own kind of CRM that we built to sort of respond to tickets. And then we ended up buying a CRM. Smarsh actually bought a Smarsh CRM for a hot minute. I think it lasted a couple of years, and then we decided, well, it's the Salesforce thing. They got it kind of figured out. We went to Salesforce. So we went through the whole journey from old the very beginning to the end. But at the whole process, what you need to pay attention to is the customer's journey along the way. Like, what's their experience like? Are you servicing them with what they need? And I remember being proactive was one of the number one things that we needed to work on. We were pretty good at being reactive, but the more we could document out ahead of time and like proactively service the customer, both on the technology side, like automations, but also on the documentation side to get ahead of that and reduce those tickets. That was the real magic, right? That's what you really needed to focus in on. Reduce as far down as possible. Like, think of how Apple services you with their iPhone. Like, it's almost like magic when you open it up and just walks you through all these complex tech integrations. Like, that's how you have to view your job.
You said things that, I mean, as a sales engineer for Helpshift, it would come right out of my mouth because we still talk about the same strategies today. How do you become proactive? How do you alert people before things happen? And it's not easy, but it's also important as a customer just to understand that stuff. And what I loved is that as you kind of progressed at Smarsh, I remember getting a call one day from you saying, hey, you've been post sales for a long time. We need a pre-sales engineer. And I had no idea what that was before in my life. I didn't know what a pre-sales engineer was. You told me it was on the sales side. I'm just like, I don't want to work with sales. Screw those guys. But then you understand what the role of a pre-sales engineer is, and it's supporting the customer before they're a customer and helping align sales vision and saying, hey, we can't always do that, but we can do this, and just setting the expectations. How did you first get involved in the role of pre-sales? Yeah, let's just start with that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think being a product expert was probably where that landed. Once you know the product and the service and the customer journey well enough, you're in a very valuable place for the business, because now you can answer the questions that the, the same process is true on the sales side. The prospective customer is concerned about, how are you going to service me? How is your product going to service my need? Now you're in a place to basically go and present that well, and you just have to tune up those presentation skills. It is a shift. It's not exactly the same, because one is reactively fixing a technical thing where you said, hey, this is broken, how do I fix this, or how do I configure this, or how do I go forward. The other is seeing the whole picture and saying, here is what we can do for you, and here's what we can solve for you. And so that's the shift that kind of takes place. But once you're a product expert, you're kind of a domain knowledge expert, you're in a great position to make that transition.
You know, over the years, you've had a lot of different roles, from support to co-founder to sales engineering. Was there ever a point that everything just kind of clicked and it was just like, this is what I was meant to do?
I don't know if that there's a day where that just happens. That would be nice.
That would be so much
But there,
easier.
but there, you know, I would say the biggest impact there has been just staying curious, like being as you sort of are exposed to more things. I've continued for myself just being curious about each piece of the business, each piece of technology. So, for instance, I had a blocker at one point where I couldn't understand how database technology worked. So, I took a database course at the local junior college in Portland and was like, okay, I need to understand this. I mean, now you just go to YouTube University and you can get whatever you want, or ChatGPT, it'll tell you everything. It's wonderful. I love it. But you know, just being curious and understanding, like, that opened my world on the database side. And then I had some questions about, well, how do the APIs integrate and how does the software integrate? I had some missing pieces in my knowledge and I just kind of kept exposing those. And the same was true in marketing. Like, okay, how do I understand how a business markets and how do they automate that marketing? Or same was true in like customer service. Like, how do we automate these things? You just stay curious and like you kind of keep going down the road. When you keep asking those questions and finding the answers, you do end up getting to a point where you're sort of a solid generalist where you can actually feel confident to solve a business problem. Like a great example with my first company, Securecast, that was just solving a business problem that I saw and shopped around for solutions and was like looking at what was out there and realized there isn't anything that great out there. I could build better, I think. Turned out, it's actually harder than it looks. It is hard to build a successful business, but I got to learn a lot along the way there too.
You said stay curious, and I think that is a great way to put it. I think especially in the world of AI today, and people are worried about AI coming into the industry, is the best thing you can do is be curious and investigate what AI is and understand how to use it and how to mold it. Because if you don't, AI is going to come, right? There's no way of getting away from it. It's a lesson you need to learn now, or else you're going to start to get left behind. And I love how you put that, because that led you to founding your first company. Is you're curious on how this works. And I also love, I remember, and I keep saying that, sorry, but years ago we had a bet going on, and that kind of taught me to stay curious. The bet was who can get exchange certified first, and
Oh yeah.
I remember it was me, you, and Michael, and I just remember just studying my ass off for this Microsoft exam and finally passing and feeling so good that I passed it. And like, I think it's fun when you work with your colleagues and you can kind of push each other, because there's this friendly banter I think we all had at Smarsh at the time. Was like, I'm going to close more tickets than you. I'm going to do this better than you. And then eventually it's like, I don't want to answer the phone anymore. What do I need to do to stop answering the phone? And what, like, you kind of all push each other to raise the bar. And you kind of learn so much about how the operation works. And I think Smarsh was such a cool place to learn that, because we were all young, we were all hungry, and Smarsh was a great place that they encouraged that and they helped us grow. And there were good days and there were bad days, but overall, it was such a positive experience to be able to see everything. And anyone that's in a sort of company like that should take advantage of it, because resources that companies can give you, real world experiences, you can't learn that in a classroom. You can't learn that on YouTube, right? You can watch stuff about it, but you need to live it to really understand how it works.
Absolutely. You bring up a really good point on company culture, right? I mean, that's kind of having a good company culture. And companies are there to embrace that for the most part. So you can make a change. It's not just this is up to some HR person. The HR is doing the best they can. You can have an impact in your own team and your own group, and we did that together. Like, we had our own team offsites, we had our own team get-togethers, both virtually and in person. We were a hybrid work environment in the early days, which was pretty great, and just having that culture to kind of push each other forward, but also kind of be there to celebrate and learn together, um, is a really positive thing to be part of. Absolutely.
So you graduate Smarsh, we'll call it, right? You start Securecast, but even before starting Securecast, you had the idea because you noticed there was something missing in the market. A lot of times we talk to people that don't know that next step to take, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do you know it's the right time to quit your job and start this company? Maybe you're doing them both parallel, but how do you know there's the point where it's like, all right, this is the point, I have to make this jump now. It's either all or nothing. And kind of how does that decision get made?
Yeah, that's a great question too. It's you have to almost ask yourself if you're in a place, if you're ready to do this. I was asked recently by someone who's just coming out of college, like, okay, how do I have some business ideas I want to get started. Is this the right time to do that? And it really depends on if you feel confident, if you're in a place to succeed. I think there's a lot of value for working with companies and seeing them in their success and learning along the way, because it opens up all these opportunities and all these questions and all these business challenges you were never aware of, and you're getting paid to do it, which is awesome. Whereas if you're building your own business, you're not getting paid. You're paying out all the money to learn all the lessons. So learn the lessons while you're getting paid. But in that scenario, I felt like I had enough knowledge to basically start the business. There's marketing, there's sales, there's standing up the actual technical part of the business. All those pieces I felt were there, and I had enough to get going. And we built basically a security awareness platform that was adopted by several hundred organizations within a couple years time, and it was large enough at that point where we could make the decision: do we take a round of funding, or do we get acquired at that point? And that was kind of the fork in the road that we had to face. But really, I think if I go back to the beginning, it was, am I in a place to solve this business problem? And I would have never been aware of this business problem at all had I not been working for a business in this space. I don't think I could have come up with that on my own. So you need to
I
be in an environment to succeed.
Yeah, it's often, and I think I'm guilty at this. Like, you have an idea for a business and you want to start this idea for a business, and you make up this, hey, there's this problem in the market, but it may not be a problem, right? The beauty of it is when you're at a company, you can understand that, yeah, this is a real problem because I am facing this problem. And I spoke to other professionals in the same position. They are also having this problem, right? So by being in a professional environment, you get to kind of absorb that and understand, yeah, this is a real issue with no solution. What I'm curious about, though, is, you just talked about it. You talked about, do we take a round of funding? Do we get acquired, right? And you did get acquired by, I think, Webroot, right, from Securecast. Well, what is that conversation like? Do you talk with the other co-founders? Do you just kind of go based off your gut? I mean, that must be hard to give up control of your baby. And how
It
did that
is
go
and it is and it isn't. I mean, in the two scenarios we've been in for acquisitions, I've been in personally for acquisitions. Um, there's a there's basically, you have the business and you're looking to take it to the next step. The business isn't you, right? It's a business. It's its own thing, and it's going to the next step, and it's going to grow, and it's going to need people. It's going to need capital. It's going to need all the things to successfully grow. And in the case with Securecast, we started seeing that there was a market growing in the channel, it's called, or the MSP, the managed service provider channel, which is all the outsourced IT folks. And we started building toward that, but we realized, oh man, there's to really accelerate, if we hook into an ecosystem where there's already 10,000 companies in that channel using that service, we can just grow like crazy just being attached to it. Now, no one's going to just attach your product to their product for free. Like, there's got to be a win-win. In that scenario, it was one of those things like, okay, we'll go ahead and we can integrate, and then we can grow together. And it made sense. The deal made sense to be acquired at that point, to make that all happen. And that business still exists today. It's awesome. Webroot was acquired by Carbonite. Carbonite was acquired by OpenText. OpenText's security awareness, still up there, is the same platform we built, and it's now servicing, where we were in hundreds, then it went to thousands, and then it went to tens of thousands of businesses. That same baby has grown to a full grown thing, and I could have stayed on as long as I wanted through that process, as long as that all makes sense for everybody. So I think it's a for me, disconnecting yourself from your business is a healthy thing. I think you want to look at it like, hey, how do we make this thing grow successfully together?
That's awesome. Being able to identify that, if I need to grow, if this needs to grow, maybe you can't be a part of it. And I think that's a mature way and a great way to look at it. And it's a great way to create that split. So now you've sold your first company. Congratulations. And you kind of can do whatever you want. You can stick around. You can build something else. You can go somewhere else. Like, well, where does your mind go after this? Is it just kind of like, oh, the world is my
Yeah.
oyster?
Yeah, I mean, there was more exposure there. So I learned a lot at Smarsh over that decade that I was there. It's almost 12 years um, that I was at Smarsh. But I also wasn't exposed to a whole bunch of the executive leadership pieces and mergers and acquisitions and all these other things. Even though Smarsh acquired a couple companies that I got to manage, bringing them in, and I was on the leadership team, there was just more to learn. And so going into kind of being a co-founder exposed me to a lot of other different challenges. To owning a product, owning that book of business, exposed me to more business challenges. Going into a publicly traded company was really interesting to learn about how publicly traded companies operate along the way. Again, I kind of just think it keeps feeding back into the curiosity piece of more opportunities to learn, more pieces to continue to learn along the way. With our particular deal, to answer your question directly, uh, both times we built in something called an earn out component where you earn out over a period of time based on the success of the product. You get a piece of that, and you get a piece of equity in the new business that you just were acquired by. So in that case, I became an owner with some shares in Webroot. I had an earnout that was paid out in cash and shares over a 3-year time span. That was kind of awesome, honestly. Like every year, based on our performance, we saw a check and a shares come in, and it just so happens that those shares were completely matured when a full acquisition took place. I could have never known that going in, but that was a pretty awesome outcome. Then I got to see all of that, which I never would have been exposed to had I just stayed in the same role. So I guess it just changing things up was really valuable to me.
So about halfway through, we do a fireball round where I'm just going to throw some questions at you. Simple
Okay.
questions. 5 questions. Very simple. Ready?
Okay. Sure. Shoot it.
What do you have for breakfast?
Crepes, both sweet
Great.
and savory. My wife just crushed it. I was on an early morning call, and normally I'm part of making breakfast. It's a lot simpler than that. She made crepes. It was awesome.
All right. There you go. Breakfast of champions. If you were to go to a bar, what drink are you ordering?
Normally a hazy IPA,
All right.
juicy hazy IPA is my go-to.
What is the last show you binged watched?
Um, last show, uh, the Three Body Problem's been kind of the interesting one for me lately. I don't know. I don't really binge things though, to be honest. It's like binging to me is watching 2 or 3 episodes a week. So
Hey,
put
that's
me
your
in
def-
the different old person camp or something. I don't
You're not that old yet, Dan. Don't worry. What
know.
um Dan has traveled a lot in his lifetime, but what is your dream vacation?
Oh, how bad is that background noise? I don't know. Uh, motorcycle that just went by. Uh,
You're good.
Dream vacation for me is one that I went to on my with my family. We went to Costa Rica and Nicaragua, both the last 2 winters. In Nicaragua, we spent 2 months there working remote and from a villa that overlooked the water. $1,500 a month, by the way. We're not talking big money here. We're talking like your rent. So that was pretty successful. We rented out our house and went and lived abroad. So I think my best vacation is not like a 1 or 2 week. It's in like spending a month or two and like really getting to know the culture and living there. That's what I'm all about.
It's a tough life, Dan. But at $1,500, can't beat that.
No,
Uh,
it was good. I'll have to show you the picture someday. It's what you get for your money in other countries is mind blowing.
Last question is one that may not relate to you, but it's part of the podcast. Is what's the last game you played?
I
Pong.
was playing Pac-Man with and Dr. Mario with my son yesterday.
Nice. Love
A little
Dr.
old
Mario.
school throwback.
Dr. Mario was the first game I ever played with my father. I remember growing up, and it's what sparked my love of video games.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
No
maybe you
way.
just did the same.
Oh yeah, well he's got one of those little multiplayer things where it's got all the games on it, all the old school arcade ones. I love those. Those are kind of
Nice,
what our go-to.
nice. All right, you're off the hot seat here. Um, you were talking about how you can kind of do what you wanted. You were getting paid out, which is great. One thing I'm curious about is, you have garnered a lot of different skill sets throughout time. Is there one skill set that you have that you love tapping into that? Maybe it's product management, maybe it's QA, maybe it's coding, maybe it's something else.
Yeah, I think still it's delivering value to the customer, which can be both on the post sale and pre sale side. And it really comes down to listening to the customer and solving their problem. So, just this morning I was on a call with a fairly large organization that's split across 7 different countries, and we're looking at our tech stack and just being open and honest, like being in a place where I can say, okay, here's where we're going to really crush it for you, and here's the 3 things that are going to be your challenges, are those deal breakers. Like, just being open and honest, and like, are we really solving the value prop that the customer needs, and not just trying to sell them on something. I like being in that role where I'm more of an advisory. I'm on the customer side. I'm the consultant for them, not just trying to sell them to hit a quota. That's a little more painful to me. I'm happy to not have to do that side. And honestly, it all works out. I'll say, just being on the customer's side is the place of power in any organization. Listen to them. That's I follow Jesse Cole on Savannah Bananas. That guy's amazing. He's always all about the power of the customer. You should follow him too. It's like how he always looks at everything through the customer journey. That's really what you want to do. It still drives every business. Doesn't matter if it's a baseball team doing backflips or it's software.
Customers love when you do backflips. But it
They do.
sounds like you're still a sales engineer at heart. I mean, you're selling the business, but I think the concept and role of a sales engineer has evolved over the years. Rather than just necessarily giving demos, you're doing talks, you're doing bigger things than that. In your eyes, I mean, is it still what you're doing considered in a way sales engineering? Is it something else? And have you seen that role evolve over the past 10 to 15 years that you've been in it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think viewing the role as for my role as like a more of a product owner in a way, where I sort of own the product and try to deliver for what the customer needs. But that does mean I end up in a sales engineering role, and I train the sales engineers to demo successfully. I train the support team on how to answer the questions successfully. And at the end of the day, it's rolling up to, the success and failure rolls up to myself and Palav, my co-founder. He's the product manager, which I was the product manager at Webroot. In that sense, they did not have a product owner and a product manager separate. The difference is a product manager tends to be the more technical driven, manage all the software side and get all the releases out. The product owner is more of someone who is managing the business requirements. And then that's how Palav and I split up our functions. He took the technical, I take the customer. And so that's how we split up and own those 2 pieces.
When you look back at everything, right? I love how you mentioned customer is still kind of your driving function. I think again, maybe it's because of the role we all had at Smarsh, but I like to look at it the same way. I always like to say, yeah, if I was a customer, I wouldn't want to have to deal with this. I want to make sure I'm in the right mood. But I mean, when you look at kind of your journey so far and what you've learned so far, is there anything that that this is a bad question. Maybe I don't want to word it like this, but what are the top lessons learned that you think are important? Do you have pillars of some sort that you look into, like, hey, this is what's important to me, or this is what's important to me?
Yeah, I think for me, my driving force is a couple things. I mean, one, it's my family is probably one of the main driving forces, but why I'm still doing the work I'm doing is it useful out there? Am I serving my community well? And in this, I've kind of landed in cybersecurity, so I went through IT and then kind of veered off into cybersecurity and then went deeper and deeper into that. Now what I'm doing is I'm solving for cybersecurity compliance and helping small businesses achieve their cybersecurity compliance goals. And to me, this is a way that organizations can secure themselves and ideally protect themselves from hackers coming from all kinds of different malicious actors, whether it's an overseas or just somebody accidentally revealing the the company's um, uh, PII data or whatever, this protected data, just trying to protect organizations, and ultimately that's protecting jobs and ideally servicing some good for folks. So that's kind of, for me, the driving factor is just am I using my time well to service the community? And in this sense, I'm actually feel like I'm protecting businesses, protecting people's jobs, protecting our nation. It's become a national goal, is protecting our businesses. I'm aligning with that.
It's crazy and awesome. And you mentioned earlier in the podcast the concept of staying curious. And, there's a lot of places you can learn information, more so than there were back in the day when we were doing it. But where do you get your latest kind of news and what's going on in the industry?
I have so much coming at me. So I follow some of the top tier uh, thought leadership pieces out there in my world. That would be like the CISO world, the security officer world. So there's a lot of news kind of primary sources there. If you were to look up, hey, what's my top 5 or top 10 news sources for your industry, you will get a response back. And so following a couple of those is one. I actually do presentations every week, and I cover sort of what the top pieces are, and I pull it from a number of those different sources, but also just customer demand. I have requests from customers over and over again for all these different features, functions, frameworks, how to support this one new thing in Iceland. Like if it's a one-off thing and it's like this doesn't make a lot of sense for us to do, it won't make sense. But if the people in Iceland are like, no, we're aligned with the EU, this is a bigger thing, like here, let's put all these pieces together, and there's this one thing I'm looking at called NIS2. Oh yeah, this makes a lot of sense. There's like a deadline, we got to get this done. When I reach out to my customer base, I get the response back, oh yeah, there's 20 people that need this thing. That's where it's like, okay, there's time to put onto that. I wasn't even aware of NIS2 until it was brought up to me by a customer. So those are probably two sources for me, is paying attention to what the customer needs, but also paying attention to industry news out there.
It's interesting. I would say it's funny because in at Help Shift world, right? One of the things we push our customers to do is always ask for feedback from your customers, right? Even if you're launching a game for the first time, the first thing you should do is be getting feedback from customers, because you fall in love with your baby. You build this game or you build this product or this feature that you love and you think it's right, but if you're not listening to the people who are using it, the people who are playing it, you're not going to necessarily build the product that is right for the audience. And yes, you don't have to listen to every piece of information. You don't have to take every piece of feedback, but when you start collecting that feedback and you can organize it, you can make much more educated decisions. And it's also a great way to just create a community of some sorts, right? You're listening to feedback, you're providing that feedback. And I think that's part of where this whole customer support world is going, is listening to that feedback from people and making the appropriate changes based on what you hear.
Yeah, I want to share a story with that for a moment, if you don't mind. So if you're familiar with Gainsight, Gainsight is kind of the leader in customer success. They've sort of led the term, coined it. They have a conference that is sort of the thought leadership in customer success, something to pay attention to. But where that came from, Nick Mehta is the founder. He's awesome to follow. You should follow him on LinkedIn because he's hilarious and does all kinds of funny rap videos and stuff. But apart from that, he was the CEO of a competitor of Smarsh for a few years, and he was there basically to bring the value up of the business and turn that over and sell the business. And the way you bring up about the value in a business is what you have to sell more customers, but also the more customers you put in, you can't be having them leaking out the bottom and canceling. You've got to retain, you got to have retention. And so that's the whole picture of customer success, is retention, right? Onboarding them successfully and making sure that they feel serviced well and engaged. He was getting crushed by Smarsh. The company was Live Office. Smarsh was going after the customers pretty hard because we had a great reputation. We figured out all the pieces on how to onboard a Live Office customer well. And he was just seeing I'm throwing in all these new customers, but all these other customers going out to Smarsh. Like, what's the problem? He he completely shifted over his focus less to the sales marketing where most CEOs pay attention and more to the customer success, which didn't even exist, or the phrase wasn't even coined back then, to pay attention to how he can prevent Smarsh from taking their business. So we were a big part of actually creating this whole new, if you will, industry, because he saw how much that impacted the valuation, and he went from that journey. He ended up exiting Live Office to Symantec, and Smarsh actually bought a piece of that business back in the day. This is all disclosed publicly. I'm not sharing any industry secrets or anything, but from there he moved up to Silicon Valley from LA, and basically like went into all the private equity firms and all the VCs and was like, guys, this is something you need to pay attention to. We've got to have a solution, and I've got a framework. And so he took all that and built software on it. And, when you're saying, hey, get customer feedback, all those automated tools to do all of that is driven really from that problem that we realized, which is customer retention is key.
Yeah, I remember reading. I read the book of Tony whatever from Zappos, right? And that was kind of like that first experience.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
Zappos had that amazing customer support experience that no matter what would happen. And then Chewy also did something similar, and it shows you that people remember good customer service. They'll come back. They'll be willing to spend a little bit more. They'll have a little more leniency for when things get screwed up if you have a good customer experience, if you provide good proactive support. And I still think to this day it goes overlooked that it's worth investing a little bit of money into your experience, because your experience is almost the face of your business for your current customers, and you don't want to lose customers. You want to keep bringing customers in, right? And it's funny to hear the story about Nick. I know all about Nick, but I didn't realize kind of they were leaking out the bottom, and it was our experience that people were sold on at Smarsh. And it's just funny because Gainsight is a powerhouse, and it's awesome to see that. And I know we had a few people from Smarsh go to Gainsight, and they
Yeah.
have that same thing. And it's funny. Again, we're in different industries. Dan, you're in cybersecurity. I'm in gaming, right? But like the same principles exist. You want to have customer retention. You want to acquire new customers for cheap. You want to keep customer satisfaction high, right? Like these metrics translate well, strategies translate well. It's just the tech that we're using that might be different, or the terminology that we're actually selling, it might be different. But the truth is the strategies across these industries don't differ too much.
It's true. Yeah, we all have the same goal, which is servicing our customer, doing it effectively, as efficiently as possible. I mean, there is definitely the operational side of the house, right? Like there is a cost center to servicing customers. So if you can improve that process the best you can, and also still come out where the customer's a raving fan, then that's the win. That's what every business is going for.
So the other day, you posted a video online of you using ChatGPT as an example to show how you could build out a knowledge base, and it really hit home for me because people use our knowledge. They build up knowledge bases on HelpShift, and so it's just questions come to us like, "What should I put in there? How should I do this?" And you literally just took a screenshot, you threw it in there, you said, "Describe what you see here," and it knew all the acronyms, it knew all the other stuff and it's
Yeah.
fascinating. It's just a great strategy to do that. So how are you leveraging AI, whether it be for work or for fun these days? And how do you see it making an impact in the industry?
Oh, it's huge. I'm using it for a lot of things. So, for a great example, I'm on a team call and we're brainstorming, and I will literally just take everything that everyone's saying and just put it into ChatGPT and come out and then pop it in. Like, here's what I got back, and I'm trying not to claim it as my own, but it's like better than anything that we all can come up with. I mean, that just tells you the power of what's there. It still needs an operator. Like, we still need a person to sort of like mediate this. Leverage the value back to everyone. But that's an example of taking a screenshot and putting it up there, and saying, hey, you can say, act as a technical writer and describe these things, but focus in on these 3 points. And then you can then take that feedback and then kind of clean it up and clean it up again. I mean, it's amazing. We even just used AI a couple hours ago on a webinar to pick the winners. Back in the day when you wanted to pick a winner of like out of 1,000 people that were on the webinar, you'd have to load it into a script and like automate the picking, or you just have to like pick a number, or sometimes it'd just be somebody in the back who's like picking a name. They're like, oh, I like that name. Literally, we could just go, chat GPT, pick me a random number between 1 and 850, give me three numbers, and it'll go, there you go. Like that used to be hard. It's not hard, and everything's getting easier. So, yeah, whatever you can think of to use it for, it's pretty impressive. And now that uh, I was just following RSA, which is the big security conference, and where this is being implemented is like automating the looking across all the threat intelligence and seeing where the patching is missing. Things that we had to create a lot of scripts for, now we can automate that and then find where we have holes that's being leveraged. Integrating into ticketing systems. So I imagine this applies to you, but being able to say, summarize this customer's three ticket, or summarize all the ticket history of this customer and give me a summary of, are they happy? Like, what's happening? You can do that now in ticketing systems. Like, that's awesome. So, keep inserting where you want to use it. It's pretty cool.
I think we're on the horizon of a lot of cool enterprises pushing out tools with AI. Yeah, we started dabbling with it. There's like the Gartner hype cycle, and I think we're at the top of that hype cycle. And I think we're going to start to see some mature products come out, and it's going to be some crazy stuff. I think I mean, in the world of CRM, I'm
Yeah.
excited to see what they build out with CRMs and just throwing unstructured data in there. Again, I remember to Smarsh days, and even here, right? We use Salesforce, and it's a clunky to use tool. It's hard to find structured data. But once you can start making sense of unstructured data, I feel like the power is going to be crazy on what you can
It's
do with
already,
it.
yeah, I'm already seeing it. Our conference that I was at last week, Microsoft's investing heavily into this, and they're basically seeing that they can take across all the systems and all the data, automate the configurations, things that you had to manually script out. AI will pick up and suggest for you, and then the next step is allowing it to automatically update those things for you. And then taking whatever data input. AI is so good at taking any data and then translating it into what you want to see, and say, I want to take, a year's worth of support tickets and summarize it for me in one page, or summarize it for me in a paragraph. Like, that's rad. That's so cool that you can now do that. And Microsoft's investing heavy. That's going to be the theme of their year. The head of their corporate division came up on our stage and was presenting like their whole strategy around it. And basically, like, 3/4 of their attention is on AI integration right now. So,
It's nuts.
RSA, I saw a stat that said that, well, so two stats that are really cool. The ChatGPT reached 1 million users in under 2 months, and then the iPhone, like, it took like 6 years, and then the internet, it took like 15 years. Like, this is like the speed at which everything's happening is crazy. But right now there's only like 6,000 SaaS integrations for AI. Well, this is as of 2 months ago. For now, it could be like 10,000. I don't know. But the expectation is it will be 1 million by the end of the year.
It's crazy. And it's awesome. I'm excited to see where it goes. And I mean, for your business in cybersecurity, right? I mean, like, just imagine like Scrooge McDuck, money in your eyes. Like, there's going to be a lot of need for security with the future of AI, right? Obviously, a lot of
Yeah.
companies are already saying, "Hey, don't use ChatGPT just because it's not private," and it makes sense, right? I know Microsoft's Copilot does have a private instance, but like,
Mm-hmm.
there's gonna be a lot of weird things going on with AI, but a lot of cool stuff as well.
Yeah, well, there's already frameworks that they had to be very quick. The governing bodies out there. So NIST is one of the main governing bodies for cybersecurity, and then ISO is the European equivalent. And they already rolled out AI best practices as of last month because they had to. The adoption is so fast.
Yeah, but how do they know already? It's evolving so quick.
Well, they write it, like, for example, the same principles apply, which is like security. Like, you have to secure the data. Still, you have to think about, where is this data going. It's you gave a great example between Copilot and ChatGPT. Like, are you is this protected data? You need to decide: am I putting protected data in? Yes or no? And you need to decide what you're doing with that.
So we're coming up on time here, Dan, but you've accomplished a lot in your career, from, again, customer support, moving data centers, starting a company, selling a company, starting a company, selling a company. Um, I know at your heart, family is one of the most important things to you. You guys moved all around. You've had great family experiences. Where do you see your next steps? Are you going? I mean, I know it's probably hard to define that, especially at the level you are. But where do you see yourself going from here?
That's a good question. I have to ask myself that pretty regularly because I'm at the kind of getting to the end of the cycle where I can decide where the next step would be. With Control Map, we merged it into a company called ScalePad. We had when you do that, it's not like it's just done. Like there's think of the process of when you onboard a customer, right? You have to like train the salespeople. You got to train the support people. I got to go hire some people to make it all successful, like you to stand up. We're in a place now where it's standing on its own 2 feet and it's succeeding. And so there's some question there, like, are we going to dive deeper and acquire more security products? And like, do I want to keep doing that? Do I want to keep going down this MSP, kind of the small business managed service providers and educating them on the security, which is what I'm kind of doing now, and I get a kick out of. Those are the things where it's like that's where my track is. I also could go back and become a practitioner, and if I'm interested in maybe being a CISO for a company, I can see that. But what's driving my decision right now is like, am I getting enough time with my kids? It's summer. Like, I want to make sure that I have the time to spend with them and go do things. I want to be able to take days off, which my current role allows me to do. And so that's a win. Like for this year, I'm very happy with where that all is. But I think family does drive a lot of that for me, and the age that my kids are and where I'm at.
Years ago at Smarsh, you decided to focus on security. And at the time, it may have been one of the best bets you've made because since then, cybersecurity has been paramount at any company in any vertical, no matter what. But are there ever days you look back and say, I wish I went more down this path, or I regret not doing more of this before getting into here?
Um, I think, yeah, I think I would have liked to have been able to explore more business courses earlier on, which you can again go do with YouTube University today. But understanding understanding bits of business, like Y Combinator does a really good job of understanding how to grow a business and how VCs look at businesses. And I would love to go be part of a Y Combinator someday, or a different version. Like these exist in your own hometowns too. So you don't have to necessarily be in Silicon Valley. You can be in wherever you are and do these. Being in one of those would be a pretty cool experience. And I guess other regrets, like I think selling Apple stock and selling Tesla stock too soon would probably be on some regret lists there. Hold on to your that Nvidia stock. Maybe I don't know. I think Nvidia is pretty over value, but it's just like selling too soon has probably been a problem that I've always had.
Hey, don't say that about NVIDIA. We're all hoping that the sky is the limit here.
Sky's the limit
Uh,
for Nvidia. Fair enough. Well, it is at the moment. It's going nuts.
um, Anything else you want to just talk about or share, Dan?
Um, I think just I think appreciating the journey that I'll just kind of make it personal with the two of us here together. Like this, like your career journey in your 20s and your 30s. I'm now in my 40s. Um, are so valuable that the relationships that you make, maintaining those relationships over time, being able to learn along the way from each other. I mean, we got to be in the trenches dealing with challenges neither of us have ever faced before. It's like fighting a war together. So you end up becoming kind of like blood brothers after a while. Just appreciating that journey and not wishing you were somewhere else. Like just like appreciate it for what it is. Learn, embrace the relationships, and grow from there. I mean, I don't think either of us would say we want to go back to Smarsh and be on the help desk together, right?
There were
Probably
some of the
not.
best days and worst days of my life, right? I mean, being being that first line of support, kudos to anyone that's currently in that role. And luckily, with certain roles, it's less phone these days. We had to walk like 80-year-old people through how to set up Outlook, which is not a
Oh my
fun
God.
process to do. But at the end of the day, one of my favorite times I'll always have, Dan, are we were in Portland. We'd go to Life of Riley. We would get a lot of drinks. We would play darts. We would play shuffleboard. And you know what? It was a great opportunity as us as a support team to just collectively complain, environment that was our own. And it was just, all right, this is a great way and a healthy way for a company to operate, because at work we were very focused, we were dedicated, but it's about the good times. You're in those trenches with your peers. Those peers are the ones you should be sharing those stories with. And here we are again, like 14 years later, Dan. Like, I'm so excited I still get to connect and talk with you, because I do look at you as a mentor. It's funny, I always have these people that talk about mentors, mentors, mentors. I'm like, how do you even ask for a mentor? And I realize, you know what, over time, I've always listened to you, and I loved your story, and I love everything that you've done, and you truly have been a mentor to me. So I thank you for that. You've helped open my eyes to the different things that exist in this world, not just customer support, sales engineering. We talked real estate, we talked stocks, we talk everything. It's just, I thank you for everything that you did. And I do appreciate these types of relationships, because, again, we are peers, and the same people who are out there today with their peers enjoy these moments. They're going to suck, but they're also going to be awesome, and they're going to have great stories to tell from it one day.
Yeah, absolutely. Growth happens in pain. I hate to say it, but that is the truth. You're kind of forced to grow in those painful moments, but there's a lot of good moments to be there too. So I think something to take away for folks too is don't avoid that office happy hour, experience. Don't avoid that conference that you're invited into and be like, I'd rather just be in home Netflixing. You will never look back and remember the weekend you had Netflixing. You will remember that time you went out to that big customer party and you're representing your company or whatever. Those are what you're going to remember. You're going to remember those experiences of going out with your team. So
And now, not
uh,
only that, it's going to shape your future. I mean, if you would have asked young me what I would be doing, right? I came from customer support. I was introverted. I didn't think I'd be hosting a podcast here talking about video games to people. And it's just crazy that the detours that can take on your life, or how one thing can lead to another. So I love that point you made. Like, you might have to skip a happy hour here and there, right? But like, just go bond. You might not be a drinker. Don't drink. Just go hang out. Go get a bite to
yeah,
eat. Like, these moments, especially post COVID, where some people are hybrids, some people aren't, right? Like, taking any experience you can get when it's in person, because this is how you build relationships. This is how you grow it, and keep networking, right? Even if you
yeah,
left the company 5, 10, 15 years later, just reach out. People aren't going to be offended that you reached out. And I think that's the best way you can continue to grow.
yeah, absolutely. Make connections. Jimmy Douglas, a good friend of both of ours from work years there, he became one of the heads, the leaders of Tesla for their used car division, and he would always end his meetings with like, "Hey, peace out, everybody!" Just something memorable, and then everyone would know he's the guy. Like that's like over the top little crazy stuff. Like whatever you're comfortable with, make connections. I guess
Own it.
that's own it. That's right. I'll give a
Well,
little shout out to Jimmy.
Dan, thank you again for your time. Everything about this podcast. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Do you want to just let people know where they can find you? Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. A classic support answer is like, reach me at support.
Yeah.
You can find me on LinkedIn. Is probably the easiest spot to find me.
We'll have
I'm with Control Map and ScalePad today, but my LinkedIn stays with me. Yep.
your LinkedIn stays with you. We'll have information about Dan, as well as Control Map and ScalePad, on our Player Engage website, and we'll tweet about it. Again, Dan, thank you so much for your time today. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks everybody.